What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be another DN match commentary, and due to a lot of positive feedback that I got on the previous ones that I put up, I'm going to continue doing these alongside the DEVpro Duel videos as, regularly as possible, because they are more like metagame oriented, at least as of right now they're going to continue to be, so it's not something that I can just pump out tons of potentially because of the fact that, things are going to get repetitive after a while, because there's not quite a lot that you can mess around with if you're trying to stay in, a competitive-oriented scene, which is what I'm going to be trying to do with these, because, this is mainly the byproduct of me having playtest sessions with my friend for actual events and actual ideas for, regionals, YCS, and stuff like that. So, ultimately, it's going to be more competitively oriented, so it's going to be, a lot, at least right now, it's going to be a lot less of a place for me to explore new ideas and stuff than it would be like if I was doing a DEVpro duel video or something where I literally could just go into the OCG land and just be like, let's play test with this card that was spoiled a week ago, something like that. But basically, I'm going to continue doing these alongside DN. I'm going to continue doing these DN videos alongside the DEVpro duel videos. They definitely won't class each other out. I will just continue doing both of them simply because, people seem to like this and people like DEVpro videos as well, so I might as well just do both if I'm capable of doing them. But this deck that I'm playing with today is actually a thought that I had at work one day, because I hadn't seen anyone do anything with it, and that is playing Card of Demise in the Geargia deck, because Geargia Gear is back at 3, and it's arguably one of the most powerful cards that this archetype has accessibility into with your Geargianos and stuff like that. It basically makes, if Geargia Gear wasn't at 3, I don't think I would actually play this deck with Card of Demise in it, or at least try it, because of the fact that, you'd only have 3 Geargia armors, and you'd only have 1 Geargia Gear. That's only 4 cards that you could potentially start with off Card of Demise that would yield you a favorable interaction. But since Geargia Gear is at 3, it makes it definitely a lot more handy to actually try this Card of Demise route, because the strength of the Geargia deck has always been, the deck is very, very good at playing with a small monster count in the form of, flip-flopping with armor. You have multiple ways to get to armor. Geargia Gear gives you 1 card exceeds plays into Gear Gigant, which, again, lets you access your armor and other cards like that, and then you can just build extra cards off of Ancient Gearbox, adding, either of your Geargianos or Arsenal. As you can see from this build that I'm testing, this is a very preliminary build. I basically threw this together and I decided, let's start testing this. Let's see if this is actually a concept that can actually work, because the Satellar, build worked pretty well, and pretty much every Card of Demise deck that I've played and, worked with, I've been able to identify the traits that make the deck work. And Geargia definitely has those traits of the kind of deck that would work well with Card of Demise, thus having, these starting cards like Geargia Gear and stuff like that, that all these other decks that I've been playing with Card of Demise in them also have, the Stellar deck with the Neb and stuff like that. Armor basically just fills that role just as efficiently. The only problem is that, you have cards like Geargia, which I've omitted from this build, that conflict directly with Card of Demise. Now, arguably, it's probably correct just to play at least 1 copy of Augur, or maybe 2 anyway, but the monster count is already pretty high for a Card of Demise deck, being 14, because you have to play 4 Geargianos, so that you can always guarantee there's, Geargia Gear live, even if you drew some Anos off of Card of Demise, you still have a live Geargia Gear, stuff like that. The only place I could see where you could possibly shave down on copies of cards is probably an Accelerator. You could probably cut Accelerator to 2, or maybe even 1. It could very easily be something that might be cuttable down to 1 just to slim the monster lineup down by 2 cards, because, drawing monsters is definitely what you do not want to be doing off of your Card of Demise. But, essentially, the entire concept of the deck is literally the same as any other Card of Demise decks, but it's try to get to Geargia Armor or Geargia Gear off of Card of Demise, draw traps, do stuff like that, and then once you've gotten that out of the way, you can utilize, Ancient Gearbox, which is a resource that other decks don't have as well, that just gives you free cards, for Twin Twister and stuff like that. It's just a free card that you can just keep floating back into, which gives you more and more cards to use at your disposal, which means you could probably actually get away with playing some of the good discard traps in this deck, like Raigeki Break, Phoenix Wingman Blaster, stuff like that. But essentially, that's enough rambling for this little part of this video, and let's just jump into the match that I played. I believe this one is going to be Kozmo. Alright, so moving into game 1 of this match, I know that I'm playing against Kozmo because that's what he said he wanted to play. That's what we wanted to test. We wanted to test the theory of the deck against what is regarded as one of the 2 best decks of the format, that being Fire King Kozmo and Extra Deck Monarchs are very much considered to be the 2 driving forces of what you need to be able to beat this format to, do decently well. So I win rock, paper, scissors, and I choose to go first because, I'm playing 1 Geargia and 2 a card of Demise deck. Geargia has always really been plagued by the fact that, if you go second, you essentially go fourth because, the main function of your deck is set Geargia gear or set armor or arsenal into an armor. And you have to have that set for a turn before you can, flip it face up. Now that has been alleviated a little bit by, the addition of Geargia Augur, allowing you to have more reliable accessibility into something like, Accelerator and go into Geargia at turn 1. But, unfortunately, this being a card of Demise deck, monster count's really low, thus no Augur. So, there's definitely that. But so I open with set armor, no card of Demise, and I just set emptiness and another card and pass my turn. The other card I believe is called the Haunted, if I remember correctly. And he starts his turn with Terraforming for Kozmo Town, plays Kozmo Town, shovels back a Forerunner and a Dark Lady, and then draws 2 cards. And he just summons a Strawman and he attacks. He knows I'm playing Geargia, but he just attacks into it and acts like he doesn't know what I'm playing. Just doing standard generic playtesting things, acting like you don't know what you're playing against, even though we are very much on Skype and we know what each other is playing. And so he attacks with my Strawman into my Geargia armor. I get Arsenal off of the armor search, and then he tries to use Strawman's effect, to which I just dick him out with emptiness. He uses Kozmo Town to add the Strawman back to his hand, takes a little bit of life, sets a card, and passes his turn. And so during my turn, I turn the armor to attack mode, summon the Arsenal. It's 1119 because the Arsenal gets the boost from Arsenal and the armor itself. And then I use Armor's effect, flipping it face down and ending my turn. So I'm literally just sitting here and just dicking him over with this emptiness. I don't even think he main decks an out to it, as most decks typically don't, because it's not a card that you don't really expect to play against. But I mean, it's a one of. If you have it, you have it. That's basically the motto. But he uses Kozmo Town, shuffles 2 back again, draws 2 after shuffling, and I'm just basically at this point where I'm just dictating the pace of this game because of the fact that I can just keep this emptiness on the board and I can keep flip-flopping armor, and I'm capable of searching stuff like Arsenal, which is very, very large in the form of it's probably one of the biggest normal summons because of the fact that it's always going to be either 17, 19 or 21, and they just keep getting bigger the more and more you add to it. And so I contemplate what I want to attack with here for a little bit, because I'm I have game if both the Arsenals hit, but if I hit with Armor and Arsenal, it's only 32. So I'm well, I did see him add a Strawman to his hand, so I'm going to attack with one of the Arsenals, which is currently 21, and, guarantee kill it, which it ends up being the Strawman, and then I attack him for 32, flip my armor back face down, and end my turn. And so, for his next turn, he reveals off Kozmo Town, Slip Rider Strawman, draws cards, and just, does not have the out to the emptiness. So literally just dicked him over with a Floodgate, as is the typical Yu-Gi-Oh nonsense. Floodgates will dictate literally whether or not you can play the game or not in some cases, and it just becomes a bit problematic. So going into side decking, I'm not sure exactly what I'm actually wanting to side. I know I want to put in the Max C's because I know I'm going second, and I know I want to take out Giant Hand and put in Stardust and put in the Starlight Roads potentially. And so I'm just trying to figure out what I want to actually move around, and I end up taking out the Magic Deflectors because they're dead in the matchup. I contemplate taking out the box just because it's not really something that's really needed, essentially. And ultimately, I just keep moving around with different potential options of whether or not I want to take out Oasis of Dragon Souls or not. And I think I end up finally just settling on taking out one of the accelerators and then taking out the Oasis of Dragon Souls. And then I try to move it and put in 2 more Imperial Iron Walls, but then I remind myself that I'm actually going second this game. So instead of putting Iron Wall in, I just, reverse the change that I made. Put the Rivalry back in because it's still just as strong against this deck as Iron Wall would be, and then putting the Oasis back in. So ultimately, the only things I ended up putting in the deck were Max C's and Starlight Roads, and swapped the Giant Hand out of my extra deck for Starlight Road, or for Stars Dragon for the Starlight Road, just to combat things like Twin Twister and things like that. So I look in Watcher's chat, and this dude just posted a YouTube video link, and I was I really want to click on this, but I'm filming. So I definitely just don't want it to open, and I don't want to have to like do anything. And so my friend goes and starts watching the video, and I'm just like, he's like, this is just a Minecraft video of something. And it's just like a big L. And it's just like, I think he's calling you out, taking the L. And it's like, no, that's definitely not the case. That's definitely not what's going on here at all. But my opening hand is very, very weak in terms of like I'm going second, so I'm starting fourth with a Geargia gear and an arsenal. Like, this hand was amazing for going first. I have the emptiness again. Like, the only card in my hand that's kind of shitty is the fact that there's the ancient there. But like, ultimately, I'm very, very much like, if I had gone first, like, I would just have a set armor and set Geargia gear, and I could potentially like duality in the card of Demise and get 2 draws off of it because the box is staying in my hand, unfortunately. But I digress. So he starts his turn, activates Fire King Island, pops Dart Destroyer out of his hand, summons Delta Shuttle, and uses Delta Shuttle to send a Kozmo Sword Trooper. And this ends up being a mistake that we actually address later in the turn. He very much should have sent a Strawman there, and we were just kind of like messing around, and so because of that, like, he just made the wrong play, which is unfortunate, but he still does end up like in a decent position. He doesn't like burn resources too terribly. He definitely gets things kind of where they should end up being, and like, to be honest, I am playing a Geargia deck, so like, he knows that I'm starting fourth because there's no Augur in my list, so like, he doesn't feel that threatened ultimately, but it still just ended up being like a very, very poor play on his end that could have easily been remedied by him sending Strawman first. And this is something that we ended up talking about in the Skype call, is that, you know, sending that first Sword Trooper was a mistake because he could have just normal summoned the Garunix out of his hand instead of, you know, using Sword Trooper to make Grand Pulse. He could have normal summoned the baby Garunix and then overlaid for Grand Pulse, popping his Fire King Island, then floating into the other Sword Trooper, and then he can go Sword Trooper into Strawman here. And this is the point where we're just discussing it. We're just like, I was like, if you want to fix it, just fix it. It's like, we can rewind the game state, I can pause the recording, and I can edit like the chunk out, and we can just have it going down the string of the right play that, you know, you wanted to make. But he's like, no. He's like, no, I'll just own up to it. This is how we test. And it's like, we basically just like allow each other like one minor take back, and at this point it's like a big take back. Even though it is like one small change, it does change the like the movement of certain cards around in terms of how they interacted. So like, that's just the way we decided to playtest. And he's like, I gave him the option a few times of whether or not he wanted to go and get the Strawman and continue his play, because I want to playtest against, like, you know, if it's going to be operating at full capacity. He's like, no, I'm going to own up to this mistake. I'm just going to keep it the way it is and just go from here. He's like, I'm just going to play it out from here, see what happens. Just giving me like, just kind of like the general thing, just like holding yourself to the play. And that is something that I actually don't see a lot of people do when they play test, is that, like I said earlier, me and my friend, we give ourselves one minor take back per game of something that we could fix, unless we both agree that it was just a terrible play, in which case we'll just reset the scenario. But if there's a minor mistake that's made, like it is here, we usually give ourselves one like take back. But I see a lot of people that play test that they're like, you know what, I'm just gonna redo this entire turn after I know that you don't have max C, Valor, all this stuff. It's like, whoa, like, calm down. Like, I see people that playtest a very, very questionable way in the way that they do things, because they will just take back a huge string of plays and just completely change it. Whereas, like, I don't think that's particularly good playtesting, because it doesn't drill it into your head to try and get it right the first time. It makes you very slack, in my opinion. It makes you very lax. But so he ends up making Mech-Whipped Engineer and setting a card and then passing his turn. And so I end up dualitying and revealing 3 monsters. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I only play like 14 of these bastards. And how did I reveal 3 when I already had 2 in my hand? Like, it really triggered me. It got me good. Because now I can't, like, I have to summon armor and attempt to attack over a Sword Trooper and just like see where it goes from there. So ultimately it just did not seem like the ideal play. So ultimately just wasn't quite what it needed to be in terms of a play for me. But so I just summon my Geargia armor and I try to attack over Sword Trooper. He tags it out for Slip Rider, and so then I set my armor, set my 3 back row, and pass my turn. Like, the entire purpose of me attacking with the armor was to try and bait out the tag out for something like Slip Rider if he did have it. I didn't expect him to have specifically Slip Rider, but, you know, I just wanted to play around it in general. And so during his turn, he attacks over my Geargia armor with his Slip Rider. I search for Accelerator, and then in the end of the turn, I activate my Geargia gear, getting my Geargiano and my Geargiano MK2 out of the deck, making them both level 4. That way I can start my turn with Gigant or any rank 4 of my choosing. And then I have another Geargia gear down, which is also live. And so I have Upstart, I have a handful of monsters, and it's just like, God. It's just not the situation I want to be in. Ancient Gearbox might very well be getting cut from the deck simply because like it's literally just dead space. And I want to bring the monster count like very low. And on, you know, further, like, you know, hindsight is 20/20. And on further review, like the gearbox just doesn't seem to have a purpose other than just to give you that one extra free card. But like you literally only do something with it that's worthwhile with like Twin Twister. So there is that as a potential thought process as well. But anyway, I overlay my 2 Geargianos into Diamond Dire and pop his back row as my starting play because, you know, I want to like not fall victim to like a savage Kozmojo. If I'm gonna fall victim to Kozmojo, I'm gonna do it on my own terms. And so then I flip my second Geargia gear, and I summon my 2 Geargiano MK2s that are left in my deck, and they're both at level 4. And then I go to overlay with I detach and like set the board back. So I'm like, wait, there's something I need to do first. And I special summon my Accelerator with them so I can actually start floating into more and more cards. And that's, you know, just the way you want to kind of do it. And so what I do here is that I overlay my Accelerator and my MK2 into Geargia, and I detach the Accelerator to add that Accelerator back to my hand, keeping the one Accelerator that is left in the deck in there so that, you know, the armor could add it on a future turn if need be. Like, this is something that I find myself very, very much doing with this deck, is that I'll just, you know, loop the Accelerator that I'm using back to my hand, keeping, you know, the 1 or 2 that are left in the deck in there so that armor becomes, you know, as maximum, you know, impact as it can be in the future of the play string and the turns and the game itself. Just general minor technical play that I typically have always done with Geargia. And so it may or may not be correct to do it that way simply because this is a card of Demise variant, but it's definitely something that's definitely worth note, is that that's very much a play that kind of conserves your in-deck resources, so like there's definitely that. But I contemplate the sort of play I want to make here with my rank 4 options, because I have 2 Gigants, which, you know, can suicide with the Slip Rider and then get back one of my Geargianos. So there is definitely that as an option. Whether or not the Met-equipped Engineer activates its effect is basically what's going to dictate how it goes. So I decided to not overlay into anything here, and I attack with a Gear Gigant into his Met-equipped Engineer, forcing the effect on itself. And then, since, you know, both Gear Gigant and Slip Rider are 2300, I suicide into it and use my Gear Gigant's effect to add back, or not add back, to summon my Geargiano back to the board, and he gets to use his Slip Rider to float into a different card as well, and he ends up floating down into a Strawman. And so I've already attacked with that Gear Gigant, and so I decide to attack with the Arsenal that's still, you know, left on the board that hasn't attacked, because it is big enough. It's like 2300 at this point. And I attack over his Strawman. It does die, so he doesn't have any other big ship in his hand. And so then I tribute Geargiano and use its ability to bring back my Geargia armor that's in the grave to just be a level 4, because at the point the Geargiano on the board was level 3. Didn't really mesh with anything, but it floated back off of Geargia, and then it can tribute itself for the level 4 in the grave. So actually just works out very, very well. So I end up overlaying my Accelerator and my armor that I brought back off Geargiano, because its effect is negated, so I can't put it face down, so I had to overlay with it, into Castel. And so I use Castel to spin his Met-equipped, because, you know, I don't want to have to try and deal with that on the future turns. He's got 2 cards, I've got more than that, and I've got, you know, potential, you know, just walling behind this emptiness that I have set, stuff like that. So I decide to Accelerator there, or not Accelerator, Arsenal into armor. I keep saying the wrong ones, and it's really kind of pissing me off on a very fundamental level, is the fact that, you know, I know what they are, but I keep saying the wrong name. But ultimately, he ends up just, you know, scooping out because of the fact that, like, he can't deal with it, the board, in the way that he would like to with the 3 cards in his hand. He's already, you know, basically confirmed that there were no big ships in his hand left, because he let the Strawman die, which he would have definitely just, you know, banished and brought out a big ship just so it didn't die, and he could have protected his board, stuff like that. there's just multiple reasons as to why that game was just over. And like at worst case scenario, I'm just gonna dick him out of the game with emptiness again. And I told him that I was like, dude, I have this emptiness again. It's like one ofs, the one of theory. You see a one of more than you ever saw it when it was at 3. Like that's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. Like the misplay that he made at the beginning of the game just kind of made it to where he was very, very much lower on his resource pool than he should have been to deal with what I was trying to throw at him. And even though he did have a string of plays that he could follow up with, like just the cards that I had access to and like the plays that I had access to with like just pressuring him with multiple gigants and then castelling his mech-quipped just kind of really took a lot of things out in terms of what he was able to use, especially since I like sniped the call and haunted away too. He definitely had a lot of resources left, but I just took care of them in a very quick succession. If he had had one more turn to like stabilize, he probably could have easily just blown me out because I'm playing the quote-unquote inferior engine. But didn't get to see Carter Demise that match, but ultimately, if it had gone to Game 3, probably would have seen Carter Demise and probably would have done something cool with it. But otherwise, this was just a little bit of testing that we did, and ultimately, I don't know how I feel about the result. I think we played a few more, and it was just kind of weird, but like, it's ultimately just a standard Geargia deck with Carter Demise in it, so I'm curious as to what you guys think about it in the comments down below. But other than that, as always, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe to all the nonsense you usually do. Links are in the description to my Facebook and Twitch links if you want to check those out. That's what they're there for. If you want to support me, clicking ads on my videos and disabling ad block when you view my videos is the best way to do so. It's really cool of you guys if you could take the time out of your day to do so, and ultimately, it's just very appreciated, and you'd have my eternal gratitude if that is something you can take the few seconds out of your day to do, even if that entails disabling your ad block for a few seconds, refreshing the video, clicking an ad or two, and then putting it back on when you're done. That helps out so much, and it would very, very much be appreciated. As I've already said, you would most definitely have my gratitude for the remainder of my lifespan, and possibly others as well. But that's basically it for this video. Let me know what you guys think again in the comments down below, and as always, guys, take care.